Welcome to the debate. Usually when we talk about a medical diagnosis, there's this expectation of, well, perfect precision. It's like engineering. You break your arm, the x-ray shows that jagged white line, and the doctor just points at the film and says, there it is.
Right, yeah. It's totally binary, broken or not broken.
Exactly. It's clean and it's comforting because we like things to be perfectly categorized. But then you step into the world of historical sports analysis, specifically evaluating the greatest undefeated heavyweight legacies in boxing history, and suddenly that x-ray machine just gets thrown out the window.
Oh, completely. We're looking at a diagnostic landscape that is, frankly, incredibly murky.
Murky is almost an understatement, honestly.
Yeah, throughout the centuries, a lot of heavyweights have claimed greatness. But retiring with an entirely unblemished record at the absolute pinnacle of a sport, that is an exceptionally rare feat. It's this numerical perfection that acts as a shield for a fighter's legacy, but it also invites this intense, unrelenting historical scrutiny.
And today, we're going to apply that exact scrutiny. We're taking that broken x-ray machine and aiming it at two of boxing's most perfect records to answer a very specific question.
The ultimate question, really.
Right. Does the ultimate heavyweight legacy belong to the mid-20th century icon Rocky Marciano with his numerical perfection of 49-0, or does it belong to the 21st century technician Oleksandr Usyk, who holds a 25-0 record across multiple weight classes?
And this isn't just about, looking at Wikipedia pages. This discourse comes from digging into the physical realities of their eras, their fighting styles, and the actual microscopic integrity of their resumes.
I'll lay my cards on the table right now. To me, Rocky Marciano's absolute statistical dominance and his just terrifying attritional resilience make him the undisputed gold standard for a heavyweight legacy.
And I'm taking the other side. Oleksandr Usyk's multi-divisional supremacy, combined with his sheer technical mastery against modern super heavyweights, represents the true apex of boxing evolution.
Well, let's start with the foundation of Marciano's legacy, because we really have to understand the raw data before we talk about anything else.
Sure.
He retired 49 and, with 43 knockouts. That gives him an 87.76% knockout ratio, which is, the highest knockout percentage of any heavyweight champion in the history of the sport.
Which is undeniably impressive.
It's staggering. But the numbers alone don't tell the story. It's the physical reality he operated within. Marciano was incredibly small for a heavyweight. He stood 5'11". He had a 68-inch reach. His fighting weight was usually around 185 to 189 pounds.
Which is just wild to think about today.
It really is. If Marciano stepped into a modern gym, they'd put him in the exact same weight class as Canelo Alvarez. He had no business surviving in a heavyweight ring, let alone ruling it.
Right. It defies logic.
But he achieved this through just an indomitable will and a freakish cardiovascular system. He was known to run 15 miles a day, batter a specialized 300-pound heavy bag to build up his power. He brought this devastating weapon, the Suzy Q overhand right, and he essentially cleared out every single available challenger in his era until there was literally no one left to fight.
No one at all.
Right. That level of comprehensive dominance, doing it 49 times without a single loss, creates a historical footprint that I just don't think has been surpassed.
Look, there is a romance to the Marciano story that is undeniably powerful. But I come at it from a different way. I look at Oleksandr Usyk, 25-0, with a 64% knockout ratio, and I see a fighter who has solved the ultimate physics puzzle of boxing.
Okay, explain that.
Well, my core premise here is that resume density far outweighs a raw body count. Usyk didn't just clear out a regional division. He unified the entire cruiserweight division, taking all the belts from prime champions like Murat Gassiev and Maurice Briedis. And he did it in their own home countries.
The ultimate road warrior.
Exactly. And then he moves up to the heavyweight division, and he isn't just surviving up there. He is giving up 35 to 50 pounds against modern super heavyweight giants and beating them.
Beating them consistently.
Right. Usyk is a 3-time undisputed champion, once at cruiserweight, twice at heavyweight. The level of opposition he has faced in a condensed time frame proves a superior legacy. He relies on spatial awareness, footwork, and pure intelligence rather than sheer blunt force.
Let's actually unpack that physics puzzle you just mentioned, because the physical differences between these two eras are massive. But I think people often misinterpret what that size gap actually means.
I'm glad you brought that up, because when we talk about physical dimensions, direct size comparisons really expose how narrow Marciano's era was structurally.
Narrow in what sense?
Well, like you said, Marciano walked around at 185 pounds. He wasn't using modern weight-cutting science. That was just his natural size. In the modern era, an athlete with Marciano's dimensions would be a super middleweight or maybe a light heavyweight.
True.
He simply wouldn't be allowed to compete as a heavyweight today without getting severely hurt.
Because the floor for heavyweights has changed.
Drastically. Usyk is naturally a cruiserweight, but he strategically bulked up to around 220 pounds. He has a 78-inch reach, and he uses it to conquer men who are literally towering over him.
Right, massive guys.
We are talking about guys who are 6'9", weighing 270 pounds. I mean, Tyson Fury is a mountain of a man. The physical barrier that Usyk overcame is just objectively higher. The evolutionary scale of the heavyweight division has shifted so far that Usyk is competing against the species of giants that did not exist in the 1950s.
I see why you think that, but let me give you a different perspective. We cannot penalize an athlete for the evolutionary limits of their time. You can only fight the people who exist when you are alive.
Sure, that's fair.
The true measure of greatness is how a fighter maximizes their specific physical tools to solve the geometry in front of them. And this is where Marciano was brilliant. He didn't just deal with being small, he weaponized it.
How so? By just swinging harder?
No, not at all. Through profound tactical innovation. Under his trainer, Charlie Goldman, Marciano developed this deep bobbing and weaving crouch. By dropping his center of gravity, he artificially lowered his height even further.
Ah, to get under the punches.
Exactly. Imagine you're a taller fighter, say 6'3". If the guy in front of you is practically squatting at your waistline, trying to punch down at his head completely strips you of your leverage. You fall forward off balance. Goldman turned Marciano's lack of height into a trap.
That is clever, I'll admit.
Plus, Marciano used his right glove almost like a catcher's mitt to parry orthodox jabs. Once he slipped that jab, he used a shifting mechanism. He would actually step his rear foot forward, completely changing his stance mid-combination to close the distance instantly and throw a devastating left hook. He was a biomechanical anomaly tailored perfectly to destroy the fighters of his day.
I will grant you that Goldman's system was brilliant for the 1950s, but I have to push back on how that translates to ultimate greatness, because that entire crouch and parry system relied entirely on orthodox, stationary targets. And that brings us right back to Usyk's technical mastery.
How does that negate Marciano's style?
Because Usyk operates from a southpaw stance. He is entirely mirrored.
Right hand forward, left hand back.
Exactly. And he doesn't just stand there, he uses constant, flowing lateral movement. For listeners who might not watch his footwork closely, Usyk uses the signature pendulum step.
The bouncing.
Yeah. He's basically bouncing on the balls of his feet, shifting his weight front to back, keeping himself exactly 1 inch out of danger. He can bounce in, throw a combination, and bounce out before you can react. Usyk's footwork and rapid angle changes manipulate an opponent's guard without him ever needing to take damage to get inside.
But Marciano was relentless at getting inside. You couldn't keep him on the outside forever.
Even if he tried, Usyk's southpaw stance completely breaks Marciano's defense. You mentioned Marciano catching jabs with his right glove. That works great when a right-handed fighter throws a left jab straight at it. But Usyk is a southpaw.
Oh, I see where you're going.
Yeah. His power hand, the straight left, comes from an outside angle that completely bypasses that right-hand parry. Marciano would be catching straight lefts flush to the face all night. And let's say Marciano does manage to get inside, what happens in the clinch?
He forces the action.
But he relied on brute strength to bully guys. At 220 pounds, Usyk outweighs him by 35 pounds. Usyk would just lower his center of gravity, tie up those stubby 68-inch arms, and lean his entire frame onto the smaller man, completely neutralizing Marciano's inside game.
Okay, but we can't just simulate a fantasy fight between the two of them. We have to look at what they actually did in the ring against the real men standing across from them. The debate naturally pivots to their actual resumes.
Let's do it.
When you look at who Marciano fought to get to 49-0, he was fighting absolute titans of the sport. He defeated Joe Louis. He won the title by knocking out Jersey Joe Walcott. He fought Ezra Charles twice in brutal wars. He knocked out Archie Moore.
Legends, sure.
These aren't just good fighters. These are foundational Hall of Fame figures. And he defended his undisputed title 6 times against the absolute best the 1950s had to offer.
They are definitely historical titans, but we need to look at the actual physical state of those legends when Marciano fought them. This is where the resume density argument heavily favors Usyk.
How so?
If you put Marciano's resume under a microscope, you realize it was largely built on aging, faded icons.
I think, calling them faded is a little harsh.
Let's look at the ages. Joe Louis was 37 years old. He was heavily faded, coming out of retirement because of tax issues, and had completely lost his speed. Jersey Joe Walcott was 38. Archie Moore was 41 years old when Marciano fought him. And Ezra Charles was 33.
Well, 33 isn't ancient. I mean, we see guys fighting at 33 today all the time.
But Ezra Charles was 33 with over 100 professional bouts on his record. The wear and tear on his body was immense. Plus, Charles was naturally a much smaller fighter. He was a light heavyweight who moved up.
Even so, they were the top contenders.
Sure, but furthermore, if you look at Marciano's mid-career matchmaking, it wasn't always this dominant march. Take the first fight with Roland Lastarza in 1950. Lastarza was an undefeated, slick boxer. A lot of ringside reporters thought Lastarza actually won that fight, but Marciano got a highly controversial split decision based on a weird supplemental point system they used in New York at the time.
Okay, but...
And after coming that incredibly close to a loss, his management backed off and fed him guys like Eldridge Eatman, who had lost 8 of his last 9 fights.
That's an interesting point, though. I would frame it differently. Let's look at the context of Usyk's run before we tear down Marciano's 49 fights. Usyk only has, 7 or 8 fights at heavyweight?
About that, yes.
Marciano has 49 total fights and held undisputed dominance for years. Is a sample size of 7 heavyweight fights really enough to eclipse a guy who fought literally everyone in his division until he retired?
It's about quality over quantity.
You critique the age of Marciano's opponents, but they were the absolute best available contenders on the planet at that time. He fought whoever was put in front of him, and he dispatched them with an 87% knockout rate.
Right, but...
Usyk's heavyweight run is incredibly condensed. Marciano showed up night after night, maintaining that 0 over the course of 50 professional bouts. Longevity and the psychological burden of sustaining perfection over a decade of continuous competition is a metric of greatness that a short stint in a division just can't replicate.
It is a short stint, but look at who actually makes up that stint. Usyk isn't fighting 40-year-olds. He fought prime champions in their absolute physical peaks.
Okay, I'm listening.
Murat Gassiev was an absolute killer at 24 years old when Usyk went to Russia to unify the cruiserweights. Anthony Joshua was a prime 31-year-old unified heavyweight champion built like an action figure, by the way, when Usyk went to London and completely outboxed him.
On their home turf, too.
Exactly. And Daniel Dubois was 27. Tyson Fury was an undefeated 35-year-old giant. And, Usyk just defended his title recently in May 2026 against kickboxing legend Rico Verhoeven in Egypt, stopping him in the 11th round.
A massive event, yes.
Usyk isn't racking up stats against regional club fighters to pad his record. He is traveling the globe to fight the absolute prime killers of his generation in their own backyards. That level of concentrated, elite competition is totally unprecedented.
All right, so Usyk fought the modern giants, and Marciano fought the older legends of his day. But boxing isn't just about who is standing across from you at the opening bell.
What do you mean?
It's about what happens when things go horribly wrong. Technical mastery is great, but crisis management is what we see the true character of a champion. When I look at Marciano, his attritional durability, his pure ability to suffer, is the ultimate mark of a heavyweight great.
He certainly could take a punch.
He absorbed tremendous punishment, but his structural integrity never broke.
But he had to absorb that punishment because his defense was crude. He relied heavily on a granite chin, I mean, he was dropped by Walcott in the first round of their title fight. He was dropped by Archie Moore. He suffered horrific gaping cuts because his forward marching style left his face entirely exposed to sharp combinations.
I'm not convinced by that line of reasoning because a swarmer's ability to absorb punishment in order to deliver a knockout isn't a flaw, it's a tactical feature, it's an energy system.
A painful one.
Look at the second Ezzard-Charles fight in September 1954. In the 6th round, Charles lands this devastating blow that literally splits Marciano's nose in half. It separated his left nostril. He was bleeding profusely.
Right, it was a horrific injury.
Unbelievable injury. By any contemporary sports medicine standard today, a laceration of that severity results in an immediate medical stoppage. Fight over. TKO loss.
Without a doubt. But Marciano's corner applied these heavy adrenaline ointments, and they basically told him the doctor's going to stop this fight in the next round. And Marciano didn't panic. He pushed through that horrific injury, essentially blind in one eye from the blood, with absolute indifference to his own suffering.
It takes a certain kind of person, that's for sure.
He trapped Charles and knocked him out cold in the 8th round. That attritional durability, that sheer refusal to lose regardless of the physical toll, is a level of crisis management that borders on the supernatural.
I'm sorry, but I just don't buy that. Let me tell you why.
Oh? I hear the romance in that story, but honestly, having to rely on an iron chin to win a fight reveals a fundamental technical limitation. It shows a reliance on physiological toughness rather than defensive mastery. I look at Usyk's crisis management, and it is superior entirely because his style actively prevents that kind of damage from occurring in the first place.
Prevention isn't the same as managing a crisis, though.
But he has navigated his entire professional career against massive punchers without ever being officially knocked down or suffering a major facial cut. Using systematic evasion, rolling with punches, and breaking an opponent's rhythm is just a much higher form of boxing intelligence than bleeding on your opponent and walking through fire.
But crisis management isn't just about evasion. Evasion is great until it fails. Crisis management is how you react when the evasion fails and you actually get hurt. And Usyk has shown vulnerabilities to physical damage, specifically to the body.
You're talking about the Daniel Dubois fight in August 2023.
Exactly. Dubois landed a massive right hand directly on the waistband of Usyk's trunks in the 5th round, and Usyk went down in intense, agonizing pain.
Well, it was ruled a low blow.
Now, the referee ruled it an illegal low blow and gave Usyk nearly 5 minutes to recover. But regardless of whether you think that punch was on the belt line or below it, it showed that Usyk can be severely hurt by body attrition. Tony Bellew found success targeting Usyk's midsection early in their fight. Anthony Joshua went to the body in their 2nd bout.
Sure, the body is a target for anyone.
If you put a relentless body puncher with Marciano's stamina in front of Usyk, a guy who would just batter your arms and torso for 15 rounds, that exposes a real structural vulnerability. Marciano didn't just headhunt, he hit whatever piece of your body was available until you broke.
He'd hit whatever was available if he could catch him. But let's actually look at how Usyk handled that Dubois incident, because I think it proves my point about his mental fortitude.
Go ahead.
Dubois' camp is screaming that it was a legal knockout. The arena is in total chaos. Usyk is clearly in agonizing pain. But what does he do? He doesn't panic. He doesn't start swinging wildly.
True, he stayed calm.
He takes his full allotted recovery time to let his heart rate settle. He maintains his absolute composure. When the fight restarts, he makes immediate tactical adjustments, changing his lateral angles to protect his midsection, and he systematically breaks Dubois down for a 9th round stoppage. He managed the crisis with his intellect, not his blood.
It's just a completely different philosophy of combat.
It really is. And that's why, to summarize my position, I look at Usyk's 25-0 record and his status as the only male fighter in the 4-belt era to achieve undisputed status 3 times, and I see the absolute apex of boxing.
Right.
He proves that elite skill, spatial management, and unparalleled mobility can consistently conquer sheer mass and power. His legacy isn't about how much damage he could take. It's about his global, multi-divisional supremacy against the biggest, most dangerous athletes the sport has ever produced.
And my position remains that Marciano's 49-0 record and his 87% knockout rate represent a type of era-defining dominance that we will just never see again. He took his physical disadvantages, his height, his reach, and weaponized them to create a pressure system that literally broke the will of every single man he faced.
It's an incredible story.
Sustaining numerical perfection over a grueling 50-fight career defines an entire golden age of American sports.
I think we're arriving at a really fascinating point of convergence here. We both clearly agree that both men brilliantly maximized their specific, vastly different physical attributes to achieve greatness.
Oh, completely agree. They squeezed every ounce of potential out of their bodies.
Right. Where we diverge is on the criteria of history itself. Is it better to have raw volume and longevity in a regional transitional era? Or is it better to have a condensed, multi-divisional supremacy against global modern giant athletes?
Volume of a pristine record versus the density of a modern resume. It's the ultimate debate. And what's fascinating is that this isn't just dead history. These philosophies are still interacting today.
Oh, definitely.
If you look at the source material on Usyk's current run, there is this incredible dynamic where he is actively mentoring his former rival Anthony Joshua. After they fought twice, Joshua actually joined Usyk's training camp in Spain to prepare for his own showdown against Tyson Fury. It really shows Usyk's pervasive influence over the sport.
It's a phenomenal detail, isn't it? You have a former unified champion in Joshua, a guy who is physically much larger and stronger than Usyk, seeking out his former opponent to learn how to think in the ring.
Yeah, it's wild.
It illustrates Usyk's status as a true master tactician. His influence literally extends across his own competitors, adding this entirely separate, complex layer to how we evaluate his legacy.
It really does. As we said at the start, perfection on paper, a 0 in the loss column, feels like a clean, comforting X-ray. But stepping into the reality of these historical legacies reveals this incredibly rich, complex landscape of fighting styles, era contexts, and sheer human will.
It's a lot to weigh.
It is. And we aren't going to declare a definitive winner today. Instead, we leave it to our listeners to weigh the evidence, look deeply at the mechanics of these two pristine careers, and decide for themselves. In the ultimate calculus of boxing history, does the crown belong to the unbreakable will of the past or the untouchable technique of the present?